Counter-violence extremism is a phrase that was coined in the United States of America under the Obama regime. It is to counter all extreme violent ideologies held by groups or individuals. This program on your TV set right now is aimed at countering extreme violence by talk and action anywhere in Nigeria. Welcome to Not Another Nigerian. I am Imewori Uhiamokai. For the 4 episodes of this program, we shall be spanning through Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa states. We shall be focusing on one of the major violent extremist groups that has come out of Nigeria, popularly called Boko Haram. We shall be looking at how this group came about. What is the genesis? Why did they start what they started? Why all the senseless killings? Can we avoid this kind of killings? That is what we shall be doing in 4 episodes of Not Another Nigerian. You can join us on social media with the hashtag Not Another Nigerian. I am Imewori Uhiamokai, and welcome to the first episode of our show. We shall be back after this break. Welcome back. We start our program with a special feature on the history of Boko Haram, after which we shall come back to the studio and talk to our guests. There are many in the studio. Let's take that special feature. The sect Boko Haram became known in Maiduguri, Borno State in 2002. It was founded by Muhammad Yusuf, who established a religious complex and school that attracted poor Muslim families from across Nigeria and neighboring countries. The group later blossomed. What better way to start our story than to start from the home state from where it all began, Borno State. The story of the history of Boko Haram and its activities in the northeastern part of Nigeria is as diverse as the many people we heard it from. All of them have their interactions with some members of the sect in one way or the other. The University of Maiduguri has been one of the targets of the insurgents, but despite this, the school is still thriving and has never been closed for one day. The students still attend classes, while lecturers still come for lectures. Dr. Ibrahim Umara is a lecturer with the Political Science Department of the University of Maiduguri.
It's a deliberate attempt to deconstruct our identity. 2, the process that led to the conscription of the membership was a sneer-like setup, because in Borno State and indeed in the Northeast we have 2 educational systems. The Quranic educational system vis-a-vis the Western educational system. The Quranic educational system had been here for more than 1,300 years back. And unfortunately, the system of education based on the Islam is completely relegated as a result of colonial incursion.
Perhaps one of the closest people to the originator of the Yusufiya movement, which transformed to the group Boko Haram, Muhammad Yusuf, is Barrister Aisha Wakil. Barrister Wakil is popularly known as Mama Boko Haram and is still in touch with the members of 1 or 2 factions of the now dreaded Ali Sunnah Lidawati Wa Jihad.
Muhammad Yusuf is from Yobe State. He's not an indigenous of Borno, that is Kanuri. He's not an indigenous. From here, Brody him and Shekaro, they are from Yobe. something went wrong, when opinions are not together, they keep moving. Then they landed in Yobe. They stayed there for some time. They had a misunderstanding with the then governor. They were farming in that Yobe state. They were farming. They were doing their things, staying on their own. Somewhere along the line, when they fell out with the then governor, they now proceeded to Maiduguri.
The Boko Haram group has over the years become extremely violent and is reported to have killed hundreds of thousands of people and sent many more homeless. It broke into factions, and Aisha Wakil gives us an insight as to why this may have happened.
There is also this supremacy going on with Windhelm. Kanuris are not giving in because they're in power. They don't want to give certain pros to certain tribe. So that was it. There was one incident that happened when I visited them in the bush. I saw tent here. I said, what is the meaning of this? Why are you people doing tent? If I'm going to have a meeting with you, if I'm going to talk to you, all of you must be together.
But Dr. Ibrahim Umara does not believe in this factionalization of Boko Haram.
I don't believe any issues of factionalism in Boko Haram. That is what I want you to know, number one. They are in bush working for some people that are behind the scene. Whatever agreement that you will have, if it does not conform to the interests of those supporters and sponsors, they will not be to that agreement.
This internally displaced persons camp in the heart of Maiduguri houses about 300 persons. The state is pathetic. The houses are made of softwood and thatches. The community head explains more about the situation in this community.
Boko Haram
Since they came here, how has life been with them in this place?
So,
this is a typical room that houses about 6 people. We spoke to some of the occupants on the attacks of Boko Haram insurgents and their relocation to this place.
Labunye gaya sam abonyana la kanin me gozna la kanin me gozi dai isana ar bala diriga kulda bundu papa obo dai cinyana ar akamba kamandi asinde zaksana dai kasa gonya ciro lu yana ara dai lenya karala waye karawa nyana gaido ni ishana dai alhamdulillah da haka imla do lorote da a kware.
They also have their requests from the government to make life better for them.
Source of water is poor. Source of water.
Now you know a bit about how Boko Haram actually started, but we shall be probing further with our guests in the studio. We have our main guests, who is the Zana Boguma of Borno's Emirates. He is Alhaji Zana Boguma. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
We also have our guests, young Nigerians. The oldest we have here is 29. So these are the stakeholders for what we are discussing and what we are focusing on Not Another Nigerian. But first, let's talk to our guest, Alhaji Zana Boguma. welcome again.
Thank you.
We've just seen a feature on the history of Boko Haram. But for you, how would you describe how Boko Haram started in the year 2009?
The Boko Haram insurgency started in 2009, but prior to that, there was what everybody knows as the Yusupia movement. The movement was named after the leader of the insurgency, Muhammad Yusuf. His followers referred to the movement as Yusupia, just like in the case of Metasini of the 80s. Boko Haram started first as a religious group trying to teach some of the tenets of Islam. They are a sort of an orthodox Islamic adherents of the Sunni stock, and the ideology largely lies on the Ibn Taymiyyah aspect of Islam, because they refer to themselves as the followers of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. That was why lately, when it started ransacking and killing innocent Nigerians, they started referring to themselves as Jama'atu Ahli Sunnati Lidda'awati wal Jihad.
Could you tell us what exactly that means?
Well, people who are the revivers of the prophetic traditions and striving, because jihad to many is just like, an armed conflict, but it wasn't like that. Jihad literally means striving against certain things that happens around yourself. So they started this as a movement, and Muhammad Yusuf was allowed to wax stronger here in this part of the country because of the relative peace of the state and because of so many other reasons. So they started peacefully first, but the extremist ideas were always taught to their followers. From the places where they held lectures, it was always anti-establishment, anti-system, and really very dangerous scenario came in. And the government of the day and other law enforcement agents, though they have been trying their best at that time, allowed it to grow into this monstrous problem. In 2009, precisely it was around November when they first struck. It was a Sunday night, and that night, Maiduguri and its environment saw the calamity that will unfold later, and that will also live up to about 9 years now. So they started first by attacking police stations and also killing policemen and any paramilitary that they saw. They did not start killing innocent people, but they went against the established authorities, because the name Boko Haram was given to them. It wasn't their own name. As I said initially, they were a Yusufia movement, but later they took that name of Jama'atu Ahli Sunnati Lidda'awati wal Jihad when, Yusuf was killed by the security agents and Shekau took over as the leader of the movement. And they hold the whole capital of Maiduguri to a ransom. And later, after the federal government sent in its forces to quell that disturbance, after 4 days of the disturbance, they were, simply wiped out. Many of them were killed, many, absconded, and some of them went into hiding. So later in 2012, or 2010 precisely, they came back after 1 year to launch an anniversary of their renaissance, and from there, the killing started. And throughout Maiduguri, innocent people were killed. Whoever that reported them to the authorities would be fished out and killed, particularly our traditional rulers. The Lawans, the Bulamas, and district heads were killed. The religious scholars who are going against their teachings were also killed. And also other businessmen in the capital were targeted and killed. So that was how Boko Haram started in Maiduguri.
Now, it's so obvious that they were actually, it was quite easy to recruit people into this sect that started extreme violence. Why would you say there was so much ease in trying to recruit youth into this sect, or young people?
Well, our young people are the most vulnerable, particularly with the rate of unemployment and with the rate of so many of the injustices that is happening in the society. Basically, Boko Haram was about absence of social justice. They felt they are deprived. They felt there is no justice to their cause. Nobody is looking into their problems. These are some of the grievances that they have. But the extreme violence that followed the once peaceful Yusufia movement was as a result of the crackdown on the movement proper. When the military came in, they did what they were supposed to do, because the whole of the metropolis was held to a ransom. Nobody is moving anywhere. Everybody is so much fearful that they have all, retired into their homes. It is only the security men and the insurgents. So their way of recruitment was the major challenge that we have, because what they have been teaching seems like inviting people, because they have been going against the government and telling the youth of the failures of government, particularly our young, educated, men and women. Those initially that have followed Muhammad Yusuf's teachings were even taught that Western education is totally against the faith of Islam. Therefore, it has to be fought head on. And that was how they started. And most of the things that Muhammad Yusuf presented to them were seen as solution to some of the problems that they have. Government and other well-meaning Nigerians, as they were accused of not, being so much concerned with the plight of the young men. And that was how Muhammad Yusuf started enticing them into accepting his principles, into accepting his teachings, and he gained followership. And that was the recruitment initially. But later, when Muhammad Yusuf was killed and Shekau took over, I said earlier, they went into hiding, many of them. Some of them even went away from the state. Some even went out of Nigeria to the neighboring countries of Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. But later, when they relaunched their insurgency, which was violent at that time, and initially, when the federal government of Nigeria sent in the armed forces to quell this crisis, General Maina came in with a heavy military, presence, and they did quite well. In 4 days, they totally, quelled that insurgency. And as I said earlier, many of them went into hiding. Some went to the neighboring countries of Chad, Niger, and Cameroon. So after 1 year, they resurfaced again and then started killing people, following them to their homes and slaughtering, shooting, this and that. Most of the northern part of the capital was taken over by Boko Haram, from areas like Jajiri up to Blabrin Garanam. All these places were taken over by Boko Haram. They drive out all the people, and then they took over their homes and started, going about their atrocities. Then the youth started thinking inwardly that, look, if we allow this thing to go without reacting, definitely we will be wiped out. So the issue of civilian joint task force came up, to own up their security. And they went about arresting those with AK-47, that is the Boko Haram insurgents. They went about arresting them and pushing them out from their localities and handing them over to the military. That was the beginning of the, blossoming of the crisis into a proportion that was felt that now Boko Haram insurgency has become something else. And when this thing started, it was the same civilian JTF that drove them out of Maiduguri. And now they took the famous Sambisa forest as their fortress and as their capital, where they went and then started creating havoc and attacking this community and the other community and taking local government by law until when they took over almost, most part of Borno State and claim it as their caliphate. So that was how they started. And their recruitment, as we said, was based on the teachings. They have been bringing issues of, social absence of social justice. They have been bringing high-handedness of security. They have been bringing a lot of other issues that can entice the youth, that can draw their attention, and then many of them will follow. And also, they use force in some places, because whenever they go to a community and attacking that community, they will cut away the able-bodied young ones into the forest, and they will be indoctrinated, they will be trained as military, and then they will also be sent out to attack other communities. That was how they started, and that was the genesis of Boko Haram and the nefarious
And that's
activities.
how they blossomed.
That was how they blossomed.
We'll take a break from you, Alhaji Buguma, and go to our young ones here. And I said earlier on that the young ones, the oldest person here is 29. And of course, some of the people, some of the recruits that have come into this sect, Boko Haram, have been recruited from as early as age 11, 10, 12, 15. And some of them, like someone said, those 10 years ago who were, almost 10 years ago when they started, who were 25 are now 35. But why was it so easy to recruit them? Alhaji has identified some reasons why it may have been easy to recruit youth at that time. Some of them are the fact that they felt they were deprived. There was an absence of social justice. And the fact that the religion, or they claim the religion, does not encourage Western education. Hamakan Adamu, what do you think? Do you believe that the present youth in Borno State are still deprived?
It is essential for every people to understand their circumstance and make all the necessary efforts to interpret the world around them from their own viewpoint. In regard to Boko Haram movement, it's just the issue of Boko Haram just reflects or reinforces the ideological learning and understanding of people of Borno and Adamawa towards the issue of Western education. So the movement of Boko Haram reinforced the ideological understanding of the people, because most of the time or previously the people of Borno and Adamawa don't have interest on Western education, but rather the movement reinforced their own ideology toward the issue.
That's probably a cultural belief,
yes,
not necessarily the general ideology.
Yes.
Maybe it was a cultural belief.
Yes, yes.
Now, before we go to Western education, I asked, do you feel deprived?
No, because as I said earlier, now the youth are any at least something or any motivation from government, from other organizations. So I suggest that there's nothing like the privatization of any rights of individuals in the country than to motivate or make them to join the issue of Boko Haram or anything else toward the issue of Western education, prohibiting of Western education. There's nothing like this.
They were convinced that Western education have no importance to them. So I think that was what made them to go into Boko Haram. But as for the youth, there are some school dropouts, and we also have graduates who have graduated but no job to do. I think those are one of the things that pushed them into Boko Haram.
The government failed to give priority to our public school. I'm not restricting myself in Borno State, but in the whole Northeast. I have went to so many states in northern Nigeria, but you can find out in our public school nowadays, you can get 150 pupils in a class. So I think this is one of the issue of deprivation. Yes, and then why that it is only in the private school that student will pass WAEC, NECU, and NAPTEP. I think it is most of the youth that are fully illiterate that have joined this Boko Haram sect. So if the government will give priority to our public school nowadays, do you know that you can get a street student that cannot spell "et" in word in our public school nowadays? So he don't know the value of education. He don't know the value of human being. So I think he can never detach himself from joining Boko Haram sector.
Before it was Yusufia, which before is now later on turned to be Boko Haram, which I know many of my friends where we did primary school and secondary school together happened to fall into that particular group. Many people think and narrow their thinking and focus just based on Boko Haram are uneducated and illiterate people. But they are much more than that. Boko Haram, most of them are educated people. I have known a lot of university graduates. I have known a lot of university dropout students. I have known a lot of my friends who tore their certificate and joined Boko Haram. So most of the teens, when you look up to teens, Boko Haram are not just illiterate people who happen to be a participant under that particular group. Most happen to them, though they are illiterate among them, but most happen to them as a lack of employment opportunity. Most of them, some of them are frustrated. Some of them are graduate without having some kind of where to earn source of income. Boko Haram have their base. Boko Haram isolated their safe the outskirts of Maiduguri. It was called before as Medina too, popularly known as Muscat. As of then, many business and commercial activities are carrying out there within their environment. So many of them happen to be that they were giving some kind of stipend, they were encouraged with money, they were motivated with a lot of things to start up a business. Happened to be that their leader, Mohammed Yusuf, happened to be there as their sponsor. He gave them free food, he financed them with money, provided a source of income for them. So most of the youth find it very easy to join that group, being frustrated without being a graduate without a single kobo. How Boko Haram manifested and get a lot of popularity in this state is through what? Community visit. He visits Gomari, he visits Maiduguri, he visits a lot of the wards in Maiduguri. And as of that, there is a lot of frustration on youth, there is abject high rate of poverty, there is lack of employment opportunity, and a lot of things there. So many of you tend to follow him and give him a full backup and support. A lot of you happen to join him to support him due to what? Financial problem. So as of then, that's how Boko Haram manifested and get what? Power.
Okay, thank you very much, Basil. In fact, you have opened a new chapter in this whole discourse. But before we come to your chapter, which we will talk about when we are trying to resolve these issues, as in trying to prevent something like this from happening in any other part of Nigeria, we'll be looking at some of those issues. Before we come there, Rukaya and Dahiru have questions for Alhaji. So let's start with Rukaya.
Well, my question is about the recruitment. I used to hear people saying that he's using charm, Mohammed Yusuf, during his time. You know, he's a very charismatic leader. A lot of graduates, youth used to go for his preaching, and people used to say he's using charm on people. Now, if you go for the preaching, he will give you this, that once you eat it, you just be hypnotized. So Alhaji didn't mention it.
Alright, sir, my question goes this way. While you are giving the history of Boko Haram, you've mentioned areas like Jajeri as prone area youth engaged in these nefarious acts. I want to know, why is this so?
I want to ask, what move did the government make when Muhammad Yusuf introduced the law of Boko Haram?
Okay, that's the doctrines that he started preaching. What move did the government make? Well, you may also know that Alhaji is also a director, and he's the Director Emirates Affairs. So probably he'll be answering those questions. So we'll have those three questions, and over now to Alhaji. So tell us, you have the questions. The date issue. You eat date and you are hypnotized. Hypnosis.
Well, as you know, we have been discussing earlier, Muhammad Yusuf was so, charismatic, convincing, and at the same time, he's an orator. Whatever he tells people, they just, run to him, flocking to him, as if they have a new savior in him. So really, about the date issue, there are a lot of myths going around this story. Yes, actually, people who are saying he used to give them dates and other, water to drink, and then they will be hypnotized. Some of them will be initiated simply because of taking all this. But we cannot establish this, though it is, generally spoken by the people. And also on the issue of what the government did, when they started introducing their doctrine. On the onset, when Muhammad Yusuf was going about preaching in places, didn't do anything, except the security agents, particularly the DSS, had reported, many of the, anti-establishment, speeches of Muhammad Yusuf, but nothing was done. But there are times when he was even arrested, taken to Abuja, and will be bailed out, and he will come, into Maiduguri with a hero's welcome. Many of his followers will troop out to the airport, in motorbikes and in cars, welcoming him into Maiduguri. So he saw in this an opportunity to grasp and to also sell, his popularity and his ideas to the people. This started. But what really brought about the escalation of this problem was when the government of Senator Ali Modi Sharif introduced, the banning of helmet, that is, helmet, the safety cap for those who are riding.
What you popularly call Okada riders.
Okada riders, yes. So when he introduced and make it, a law that all motorcyclists should not go about their business except by using the helmet, then the thing now started. Because their ideology is anti-authority, it is anti-establishment, it is going against the laws of the land. So they said they are not going to, accept that law. And then initially at custom area, when they were going on a funeral procession, the police stopped them, and then they started having a lot of, arguments, until when some of them were shot. That was the beginning of the crisis. He issued out an open letter to the then president, and then threatening, the government, the security agencies, and all other law-abiding citizens on, the repercussions of what they did. And really, this translated into what happens in 2009 when they strike in the night, and then it went up to this moment that we have been suffering from this problem. But, as I said also earlier, when the thing went out of hand, and when Shekau took over the leadership, and when, they started killing people in and around Maiduguri metropolis, stealing monies, kidnapping, snatching cars and what have you, all sorts of criminal activities were being perpetrated by them around the area I mentioned, Jajeri. Jajeri became prone. It's not the youth of Jajeri that were prone to the activities of Boko Haram, because Jajeri, Umarari, up to Blabrin Garanam area became accessible to them because of the nature of the people there. Most of the people there are uneducated, and then they went there, they chased them out and took over their homes as their place of abode. That was it. But as of the recruitment processes, all the wards of Maiduguri metropolis were involved, because many of the people that were there were not principally from Jajari or from Bulabulin Garandam. No, it is the youth of the state. One of the questionnaire also, was asking, well, the issue of illiteracy does not come in, because generally speaking, the whole of the northern region were apprehensive of Western education initially.
Okay,
even
like
when
was said.
Yes, even when the colonialists first came and introduced Western education into this part of the country, our people were against it because of the religious connotations to it. They thought, because many of their scholars then read stories of how British and other European countries have entered into some Islamic lands and then changing the perception of people. So they became so much contemptuous of this, and then they started going against it.
Is this still deep-rooted?
Well, it is not deep-rooted per se, but in some section of the society of the northern region, there are elements who are still against sending their children to schools. But governments were trying. There are a lot of sensitization, there are a lot of programs, and then people are now sending their children. But during that period, Muhammad Yusuf capitalized on the sensibilities of the people, and generally speaking, the most pronounced problem and reason for Boko Haram insurgency then was the continued impoverishment of the people. Because somebody mentioned, yes, Muhammad Yusuf, has a lot of money. We don't know the sponsors, we don't know who give him that money, but he became as a figure because he had been assisting them, giving them money, like an entrepreneur, and like, what do you call it, not loan, but he had been giving them money. When things started going out of hand, you see, it was because of their belief that Muhammad Yusuf is their helper, Muhammad Yusuf is, empowering them. That was why a lot of youths were trooping to him. And he gives them money. He gives them money to start business. That was what he did. Even initially after his killing, before his killing, when he declared, the insurgency proper, they said immediately the military were about to root them, he gave them money to go out of the country and then come back again. Had it not been for the civilian JTF's airport, we wouldn't have been realizing all these, successes that we have realized of late, but also coupled with the, help of the present government and the military.
Let's wrap it up here now with you. Someone, Basil, actually mentioned this word-to-word campaign, because we have identified that not just the absence of social security, not just the absence of social justice, not just the deprivation, not just the hatred for Western education. There was, of course, the need for financial empowerment. All these factors are factors that have led to this point of Boko Haram or violent extremism. What is the way forward? Especially knowing, just like Basil said, that there was like a word-to-word campaign for recruitment. What is the way forward, especially for other parts of the country, so that some things like this do not occur?
Well, on the issue of word-to-word campaign, Muhammad Yusuf, is not word-to-word per se. What he did is going from this word to the other, lecturing. There are certain centers where he gives out, Islamic lectures. And from there, he is also trying to put into the youth, the spirit of going against the establishment.
It's still a campaign.
It's a campaign. Their major, campaign slogan is, the issue of constitutionalism. They said, Nigerian constitution is illegal. There has to be Sharia implemented. You see? So these are some of the things. Muhammad Yusuf, yes, had tried to destabilize what we call the peace and security of this country. But our major problem is youth restiveness. The youth are becoming more. They have been educated, but there is no employment. They have been educated, but there is no empowerment. They have been educated. Nobody cares for. These are the problems, and these are major problems which brought about the problem of Boko Haram. In Borno, for example, this present government had been trying, to correct all these impressions by way of establishing agencies to empower youth, to build their skill, at the same time to also provide them, jobs and what have you. One of the things they have been doing, the Ministry of Poverty Alleviation is trying, as well as other agencies of government. They have been trying, but our major problem is there is more that is needed to be done. And as to the general, issues surrounding Nigeria, you see, we have one problem here in the Northeast, the problem of Boko Haram. Somewhere you go and find the problem of herdsmen and farmers clashes. Somewhere you find communal clashes based on ethnicity. Somewhere there is problem of kidnapping. And of recent, the issue of Shiite and government problem. All these problems, we here in Borno have tested, of the problem of allowing sectarian affiliations and feelings to snowball into something else. If government hasn't done anything soon, because if they allow people to go about this, because the issue, all of these issues centered around the proper application of rule of law. Wherever there is no application of rule of law, then you wait for the problems that will emanate from the actions of the people. So therefore, government should provide, as well as citizens should also accept, whatever that is there as the rules of engagement in a democratic country. So therefore, we have tested our own problem in the Northeast, and particularly because this is where people were referring to us as the epicenter of the crisis. So if this place is the epicenter, we are now going to give examples because we know what we have gone through, because all of us, but I know many of us, even the governor, His Eminence the Shogu of Borno, ourselves, did not leave this place for a second. But many of our people were chased out of Borno. Some relocated voluntarily, to save heavens. But when the peace started returning gradually, many are now coming back. So what I am now telling my fellow countrymen is that government is trying to establish a perfect peace and security in this country. And as citizens, we are always liable to accept whatever that is being given to us as way of entrenching peace in our land. Crisis can never lead us to development. It is only when we have peace and security in this country that we can develop further.
Thank you very much, Elijah. We'll go to our young ones, and they will have some last words for us, especially as it concerns the resolving of this conflict, resolving of the youth conflict, resolving of the issues that led to extreme violence. Remember, the essence of this program is to counter violent extremism, and we're doing it with talk and action. So,
I think the government, first on what I would think that the government needs to do is to regulate religious preaching. Because once they regulate religious preaching, I remember based in Gombe 2013, both the Christians and the Muslims came together and they have a constitution that bound about moving about preaching of religious movement. So once this constitution is there, I think basically it will reduce the lack of illiteracy that make most youth at the part of the state go into this movement. Thank you so much.
The community should at least provide an entrepreneurship centers, more of entrepreneurship centers for the youth. There was a saying which says, an idle man is a devil man workshop. So let the youth have something doing. Let them be engaged in whatsoever business, be it carpentering, be it blacksmithing, be it baking, name them.
Well, what I think should be the way forward is empowerment, job empowerment of youth. From the communities, parents at home, they should create things, anything. It shouldn't be necessary government work. They should not just depend on the government. There should be empowerment, anything. You can just have your ironing center or laundry center at home. Just anything, you can just get a little thing to spend.
Job employment. Because there are many youths, they are not working, they don't have anything to do. So I can see companies like flour mill, it's just like as if it's not working.
The solution of Boko Haram has many measures to be considered. One, declaring free education to each and every student within the Northeast region.
Are you saying primary school, secondary
primary
school?
school to secondary school? But for the university, I think for the state, they should have the remedy of payment for the indigens.
Okay, go on.
And 2, there should be a youth participation into government, entrepreneurship development, commerce and industry utilization in the state. 3, there should be public awareness and campaign, such as effects of terrorism in the society. 4, the most important point here to be considered is what? Marginalization of traditional way of Islamic teaching into modern way of teaching of Islamic way. For example, Almajiri ways of teaching. This is totally way of exposing your children or your child to the world without giving the actual moral, without giving the actual morals, the actual behavior, the actual public conduct, participation into the public, whereby your kid 3 or 4 years, 5 to 6 years, will be sent out to a leader called Malam, where there will be no parental care on the child, no one to tell him to stop that, do that. So modern way of marginalization of modern way of Al-Majri way to Islamic way of teaching, that should be the best way to be considered of stopping insurgency in the Northeast.
What I want to say is that it is in line with what the young guy, Abdulmumeni and Rukaya have said, because the activities of NGO need to be regulated, not to stop per se, as in to stop it completely. So the government needs to regulate their activities, knows where they came from, what are they doing here, what are their missions.
Now we have brought these young ones to the studio, not because they are the only stakeholders on this issue, but because they are major stakeholders. And so they have a right to a voice, and they have a right to say what is in them. And you have heard them. It has been very enlightening, a very enlightening discourse. They have spoken passionately, some of them from experiential knowledge. A lot of them have said the government have a lot to do on trying to avoid or eradicate what is already on ground, or avoid something like this coming up. But is it only the government that has something to do? You and I have something to do. We have a part to play. The community has a part to play. The family has a part to play. And when I'm talking about the family, I'm talking especially about parents. What kind of values do you inculcate into your children that will make them be able to resist every other thing that may want to trigger extreme violence? This is the first episode of Not Another Nigerian, and you can join our hashtag on social media. It's hashtag Not Another Nigerian. I want to thank our special guest, Alhaji Zana Buguma, who is the Zana Buguma of Borno Emirates. Thank you very much, Alhaji,
You're most welcome.
for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
You have heard all the perspectives as to how Boko Haram started. Some people say that without knowing your history, you cannot correct your present or your future. Now we know the history of Boko Haram and how it all started. I enjoin all stakeholders, government, community leaders, parents, young people, unemployed, employed. Everyone must put all hands on deck to avoid what has happened before to happen again. Our little prayer is that we will not allow another Nigerian experience what Boko Haram has done to the whole of Northeast. Not another Nigerian should experience this. This is the first episode of the program Not Another Nigerian. We have 3 more episodes to go. Join our social media tags. It's hashtag Not Another Nigerian. On social media, send your comments, send your questions, and we may treat them in the next episode. I am Imewere Ohiomokai. Join us again next time.